Everybody's got a price, it's the $1 million man. Podcast in demand. Understand, everybody's got a price. $1 million man. Everybody's got a price. $1 million man. Everybody's got a pod, it's the $1 million man. Podcast in demand. Understand, everybody's got a price. $1 million man. Everybody's got a price.
What's up, everybody? It's Marcus D'Angelo, and we are back for another episode of Everybody's Got a Pod. And of course, I'm joined as always by the $1 Million Man himself, the Hall of Famer Ted DiBiase. Ted, how you doing, my friend?
I'm doing great, Marcus. How are you today?
The man could not hope to be better. We are really, really rolling here on Everybody's Got a Pod, and you know, something I keep seeing online is people asking, when are you going to do Mid-South? When are you going to talk more about this or that? And, you know, really, it's a peek behind the curtain. A lot of it has been like, hey, look, we got to build this thing up. So, like, we're going to play the hits at first with WWF material. But now, finally, Ted, it's going to be our first episode about Mid-South Wrestling. And we're turning the clock back 40 years to July 1983.
Oh, my gosh.
Man,
well, I hope that this old man, this guy who's about to be 70 in January, can remember. So you can tweak my memory.
I will jog your memory. We've got a ton of notes. We got some great clips this week as well. But man, I'm with you. Somebody tries to remind me of something that happened 10 years ago, and I'm like, yeah, nope, don't remember that. But nobody's taking notes on my life. We've got all the notes here, so we're gonna be ready to go.
All right.
Before we get started, though, I wanted to ask our listeners, have you subscribed yet on YouTube at youtube.com/@everybody's-got-a-pod? If not, you better get with the program, man, because not only do we have content you won't want to miss there, including YouTube exclusives that you won't hear anywhere else, but we also did a huge giveaway to kick off the show in May, and we have more on the way. All you've got to do to be eligible is get over there, subscribe, and you're automatically entered for all future giveaways. Again, it's youtube.com/@everybody's-got-a-pod. Takes only a few seconds to subscribe, and you're immediately entered to win amazing prizes. So yeah, Ted, looking back to July 1983 this week, there's a ton to cover. I think that, you know, the right approach when it comes to covering your time in Mid-South is we want to squeeze every ounce of information out. So we're just going to drop in on specific months here and there. And I think that's going to be our best bet as far as kind of getting all of the information we can.
Let me just start by saying this. You know, in the summer of '75 is when I had just completed my junior year of college at West Texas State. And the summer previous, the previous summer, I had worked as a referee in pro wrestling. And so this summer, this is the year that Dick Murdoch said, hey, I'm going to work for Bill Watts in Mid-South, and it's a big territory. And he says, if you want to get your feet wet, I can see about getting you booked. And he did. And so, you know, the first guy I ever went to work for was Cowboy Bill Watts in Mid-South. And hindsight being what hindsight is, I look back at that as a real blessing because Bill Watts is one of the sharpest guys that I've ever met in terms of his understanding of the psychology of wrestling, professional wrestling. And just, you know, I mean, like, there's a lot of guys that, you know, I mean, you know, he had a bad rep with a lot of people because, you know, a lot of guys thought they should have been paid better, and maybe they should have, but there were, you know, but Bill didn't put up with any BS. It's kind of like, you know, you're either on board or there's the door, you know, take it or leave it.
Man,
So,
he is a polarizing character in some circles. Most people do regard him as being a wrestling genius. And let me say, going back and watching a lot of this Mid-South stuff, I can see why people view him in that light, because a lot of it is really, really great, entertaining stuff. But yeah, it's, you know, seeing as this is our first Mid-South episode, Ted, let's start here. Bill, as you mentioned before, is strong personality. It's kind of a my way or the highway type approach.
yeah.
And you know, we've also mentioned on the show before how he and Jake never got along. I spoke to Jim Duggan about him before, and Duggan said that Bill could be a bully.
Yeah.
Now, you personally, did you ever experience any issues of that nature with him, or was it all good?
You know, my relationship with Bill has been, you know, pretty, affable, I guess is what would you say? Because, I never, I never had any confrontations with him. I mean, it's kind of like, um, I learned a lot by watching Bill in terms of, and I guess, Jake's personality. And of course, the other part of it is, like Jake's dad worked for Bill.
Yes.
And I don't know if any of that enters into it because Jake and I have never really talked about it. But, no, Bill wasn't one of Jake's favorite people. But I mean, it's kind of like the main thing for most guys is, how you're taken care of. And, because I started there and because, and I mean, I was there for like a little over a year and then I went back to work in Texas where I had played football in the Funk territory, what was considered the Amarillo territory for a while. And, then I went very briefly to New York. But then when I came back from New York, I went back to work for Bill. And then I went to Georgia, and then when I left Georgia, I went back to work for Bill because, in my opinion, it was it was kind of like he does it right. And I have it's kind of like if you're a professional wrestler in those days, you could always say, I should be paid more. But again, being that, it's kind of like, and until Vince McMahon took the WWF and went national with it, there wasn't any place else. I mean, it's like you're either gonna, you're either gonna go to another territory, and you're gonna have the same issue there. The promoter, you're always gonna feel like he should pay you more. And there were some times when I felt like, yeah, I should have gotten a little more, but because I never did that, I never did complain. And in the long run, I feel like I got treated better.
Interesting, because that is kind of the rap on wrestlers, especially back in the territory days when it was like, all handshake deals, is that, you would hear that a lot of the guys back in the day, if they didn't like a payoff, they were coming to the guy and saying, hey, look, we had a house like this. I think I should have been paid like that. So interesting to hear that, you weren't falling under that category.
Well, kind of the way I looked at it is like when you look at that and you go and you complain and nothing happens. It's kind of like, okay, if you went and you complained and you got more money, well, okay, then if it happens again, I'll complain again. But I didn't see anybody that was complaining that was ever given an extra dime.
Right.
So
that's it too. And we also hear all the time the guys will complain about creative and they'll say, okay, what do you have in mind? They're like, well, nothing. I don't like your stuff. And it's like, well, that's not the right answer. Like if you're gonna complain, you better have a backup plan.
Well, and again, I mean, even Bill said that. I mean, he said, we can agree to disagree. He says, but he says, if you don't like something, then when you come to me and tell me you don't like it, don't just come and tell me you don't like it. Tell me what else we can do. Give me a better idea. So anyway.
Now I do want to ask, did you ever see him bullying other talents? I hear stories all the time about him kind of being rough with guys. Maybe like a good example is him saying that he wanted to see guys attack a little bit more fiercely in the ring. And I think this actually happened to Arn Anderson. He just hauled off and just punched Arn, like to kind of show guys, what he wanted to see out there in the ring. You ever witness any of that?
Well, no, I never witnessed that. I mean, and I know Arn real well. I think Arn would have said something to me about it, but I never saw anything. But I guess yeah. I mean, Bill could be a bit of a bully, but just it's like relationships, and a lot of the guys that really voiced an angst about Bill, they weren't exactly the best guys in the world either. It's kind of like sometimes it's I don't know.
No, I
don't want to knock anybody,
No.
But
And look,
you
like
know,
a guy like Jake with his strong personality, I don't see him meshing well with a guy like Bill who also has a strong personality, you
yeah,
know?
yeah.
Well, there's as we know, there's a lot more to discuss with Mid South. I'm sure that we'll return to the subject of Bill Watts in the future. In the meantime, though, we're heading into July 1983, and you have a quote unquote broken hand after Duggan jumped you in a parking lot, which rendered you unable to defend your Mid South tag team titles with Mr. Olympia. You would sign the power of attorney for title defenses to Boris Zukov, who would defend the title in your place. But because Zerkoff and Olympia had lost to Jim Duggan and Johnny Rich recently, you no longer trusted Zerkoff to defend the gold. So near the end of June, Zerkoff and Olympia would have a non-title rematch against Duggan and Rich. And while you're still out due to injury, on the first episode from July, we have a recap from the final minutes of that match.
2 weeks ago, Ted DiBiase claimed his doctor said his hand was not yet healed. And he got out of another confrontation with Dugan when Dugan and Rich were supposed to wrestle DiBiase and Mr. Olympia. So the match was Dugan and Rich against Mr. Olympia and Boris Zerkoff. But DiBiase came in from behind to make the kill, and let's see what happened. All 4 men in the ring, boy. It's just into a Donnybrook. Oh, Alfred Neely got clobbered and Johnny Rich out on the floor, but Hacksaw Dugan, he's pounding Boris Zerkoff. He's caught Mr. Olympia. Here comes Ted DiBiase with that cast. He lowered the boom on Johnny Rich with that cast. He's going for Dugan, but Dugan's caught him. The big chief. Oh, look at the cast. Big Dugan is cramming that cast in. Dugan's ripped it. Look at the glove. DiBiase has the glove, and DiBiase's hand's not hurt. He's got the glove, and now Akbar's kicking Dugan. DiBiase loading the glove. Deliberately, DiBiase is punishing Dugan. He's pounding Dugan. He's pounding Dugan. Tim Horner came. Tim Horner came trying to help DiBiase. Just decked him. He just decked Art Cruz. Dugan just powered out. Hacksaw Dugan just powered out and went for DiBiase and Akbar, but couldn't catch him. They got on their skates and got out of there, but Hacksaw Dugan, he's tearing everything down.
I don't care who you are. That's a fun angle. Man,
yeah.
him breaking apart the whatever it's called, the plaster of Paris, and your black glove is underneath. Man, that is great stuff.
Yeah, those were good times.
So, what can you tell us about the origins of your now infamous loaded black glove, Ted? Who came up with that idea?
Well, when I guess it was Bill's idea to turn me heel, and because he thought I was ready for it, and of course the thing about especially there, like if I had gone to another territory and just went in as a heel, okay. The thing that made turning me a heel really hot is that I had started in Mid-South. All the fans knew that. They knew I when I first started there, I came in as Dick Murdoch's protege, and Bill told that story. DiBiase comes from a background of wrestlers. His late father, Iron Mike DiBiase, and it would be proud of him. Da 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 da. And I was I got to be a big baby face, and so the hotter you are as a baby face, if you turn, oh my gosh, it's kind of like all the people in that territory had watched me grow up, so to speak, and had been big fans, and now I turn heel. It's like I'm turning on them.
Yeah.
And oh my gosh, the heat was hot. I think the idea of the glove was Bill's, because I think we did a deal before, leading up, because he would set things up weeks in advance, and we did this deal where out on the floor, and I went to, I can't remember who it was. I went to hit somebody and they moved, and I hit the post, with my hand, and so I sell my hand, and then So I go to the doctor, and they do the whole deal. Of course, I didn't go to the doctor, and so I get this. We made this cast for my hand, and I wore that cast for for a while, and would use it. But then when the cast came off, there was the black glove, and and Watch tells the story. It's kind of like, DiBiase's been setting this up for weeks now, and then the people look back and they go, yeah, and it's kind of like, when you get betrayed by a really good friend, it hurts, and that's how the fans were. It's like now they went from loving me to just absolutely hating my guts. And that was what we wanted.
And man, you sold it perfectly. It's the other thing I noticed that I thought was really great was that you pulled the weight or whatever it was to load the black glove out, and then you put your hand way up in the air and put the weight in. So it's like, okay, everybody.
So everybody can see what I'm doing. Yeah.
Yes. Just like, man, some old, because you want to play to the audience way up in the upper deck too.
Yeah.
So everybody can see it. There's no mistaking what you're doing. Just, fun to see kind of the tricks of the trade, even back in those days when you were still a young man in the business.
Yes, sir.
So Jerry Stubbs is the man under the mask, is Mr. Olympia. Great physique. Looks like a pretty big guy too. What did you think of working with him, and why do you think he never got a shot with Vince in the WWF?
No, I don't know. Jerry was a good hand, but I mean, he wasn't like I guess like he was, and he wasn't a leader, so to speak. It's kind of like, he would not be the guy to call the match.
I gotcha.
It was like if he was in the ring with somebody that could lead him well, he did really well. And a real nice guy. I got to be good friends with him. But just not a. It's hard to put it into words, but when somebody is the top tier, it's kind of like, I guess, charisma. Now, Jerry had some charisma, but he didn't have like the JYD charisma. He didn't have that over the top, it's hard to explain. Like he, you got to be good in the ring, but you also have to be good on the microphone. And he wasn't so good on the microphone.
Yeah, and look, it's you were talking about kind of taking charge in the ring, and a lot of people, I've heard them refer to you over the years as a ring general, where it's like you're one of those guys who, like, no matter what the situation is, no matter how it might devolve or what could happen, the way out of it, and you know how to continue to work the match. And maybe Jerry just didn't have that in him.
Yeah, and he really didn't. If he was led, he was great, but again, it's kind of like. There's charisma, and then there's holy shit charisma. Like, it's kind of like JYD. Technically, JYD was not a great wrestler, but JYD had charisma. Oh my gosh, over the top. His personality was so strong, and the way he delivered was so strong. And I can remember when I turned heel, and now, the guy who had been the best man at my wedding and all of that, now, I've betrayed him, and I'm going to be wrestling him. Oh my gosh. I mean, that was hot. And, and I remember asking Terry Funk, I said, JYD's unbelievable personality, great on the microphone, but his ring skills are limited. And he basically said, Teddy, he says, you know what? You got to kind of put him in the middle of the ring and work around it.
Yeah.
You have to make certain things happen. And, once I grasped to that, and I said, okay, I got it, and again, JYD was very, because we were good friends, the last thing, and I never would, you can take advantage of people out there and they don't even know it. But I never would do that, and I never did it to him. And and help by making him helping make him a huge star. All it was going to do was help my check too. It's going to help my money.
Absolutely, because
Yeah.
that red hot baby face needs somebody to oppose, and you're it.
Yeah.
Especially after turning on him like that. Awesome. And speaking of JYD, he and Duggan are set to take yourself and Mr. Olympia on the next week in a title match. But before the bell rings, the whole thing erupts into a brawl, and Olympia is slammed into the ring post, which renders him unable to defend the titles. Grizzly Smith comes out and declares that Akbar needs to find you a substitute partner, and you're joined by King Kong Bundy. The match would end in disqualification as Butch Reed interferes against his enemy, JYD. So you aligned with Skandar Akbar here after the storyline falling out with Duggan. I've heard that Akbar was really, really well liked behind the scenes and was always willing to help young talents.
Absolutely. Skandar Akbar, his real name was Jim Weba. and he was, you look at him and he wasn't very tall and all that, but you put him in the gym, oh my gosh! I mean, get under the bench, and take 350 pounds and do 10 reps with it. The guy was really strong, and just his, he had it. I mean, when you watch him be Skandar Akbar,
he was fun.
He was good. He was good at it. He had a way of pissing everybody off.
I've heard Tom Pritchard say that Akbar was one of those guys who behind the scenes, like he would take a young guy aside and willing to teach him and show him the ropes, so to speak. Would you say that you were learning stuff from Akbar, or by this time were you pretty well set in your ways?
Oh no, absolutely. I mean, because he was there. I can't remember if he was there right when I started, but he was there a good deal of the time, and that's true about him. If he saw somebody that had the it factor, he would go out of his way to help them if they'd let him. And I was always open to anything Jim had to say. Jim, Skandar Akbar. Jim
I'll tell you what, hearing him called Jim is a very distinct difference between Skandar Akbar. Well, I mentioned, you're tag teaming with King Kong Bundy here. The rap on Bundy at the time was that maybe he had a tendency at times to be a little lazy. Bruce Pritchard does a really funny impression of Ernie Ladd talking to King Kong Bundy. Have you ever heard this before?
Yeah.
Jake does it too. It always cracks me up whenever I hear it. You're teaming with him. What did you think of the guy?
Nice guy. Great big guy. Yeah, but he could be a little bit lazy. And maybe not so. I mean, it's like he was, he wasn't bad on the microphone.
No, he was good.
He was good on the microphone. And I think that was he was better on the microphone than he was in the ring.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where the help needed to be. And so, but he was also, he wasn't a problem. In other words, he wouldn't want to argue. Actually a funny guy. But I remember Ernie Ladd when he was the booker. Bundy.
That's an Ernie Ladd impression from you is exactly what I was hoping for when I brought that up.
Oh,
so I'm glad you did it.
Oh gosh, yeah, Bundy.
You're stealing money.
Oh yeah, you're stealing money. That's it. That's what he'd say. He'd tell him all the time.
My God, just amazing. Well, and so Ted, here you are, you're teaming with this variety of folks here. You got Mr. Olympia, you've got, you had been teaming with Bourne and Duggan previously. And now here you are teaming up with King Kong Bundy. What is the trick or the difference between teaming with somebody like Mr. Olympia, kind of a smaller, more athletic guy, and a big dude like King Kong Bundy?
Well, again, it's the psychology used in the match. It's kind of like with somebody like Mr. Olympia, he had all kinds of moves and all that, but Bundy was limited as to what he could do.
Mm-hmm.
And so, it was kind of like with him as my partner, I had to create more of the action in the ring, if you know what I mean.
Yes.
And I don't know. I don't know any other way to say that.
Well, it's kind of like, as opposed to maybe kind of doing some, tag in, tag out stuff with Mr. Olympia, maybe it's more of like a build toward, okay, when's Bundy gonna get in there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. So hey, we mentioned Grizzly Smith. He has become kind of a tough subject to discuss in recent years, especially with some of the testimonials about him from Jake and some of his other children. He was in a prominent role here with Watts. What can you tell us about being around Grizz at this time?
I had well, I didn't know any of those things about him, for the longest time. I mean, I remember the first time, and I can't even remember who told me, that, he liked really young girls.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, my eyes just went, what? I mean, I was actually kind of shocked. I mean, I never saw it. I never witnessed it myself. And, I never had a problem with Grizz. Grizz was he was like the agent for Bill. He was the guy that showed up every night. Here's what you got to do tonight. And, and he would collect the money and report back to Bill.
All right. Well, so you take on Tim Horner on the 7-7 episode of Mid-South Wrestling and score a victory. And later in the same episode, a young Arn Anderson would team up with Big Boy Williams against Dr. Death and Joe Stark. Arn was just a year into his career at the time, and he names you as a huge influence on his career, and actually his first mentor. Here's a clip from AA's podcast, Arn, where he describes what you meant to him at this time.
Been friends through this entire close to 40 years. He was my first mentor. He was the first guy that I came back through the curtain for Bill Watts, my first territory. First match of the night, and lo and behold, who did I see? Ted DiBiase. And he said, you got a minute? I said, absolutely, you bet. He said, well, I watched your match, and this was good, and this was okay, this was rotten, take that out, move this around a little bit, try that tomorrow. He was on top, not only in that territory, I would suggest he was recognized as one of the top heels in the business at that time. For him to take the time to help me was unbelievable. And at the end of the 5 months, and I got the spot in Atlanta with Matt Bourne and Paul Ellering. Just as, the last time I saw Teddy, he said, hey, let's stay in touch, da-da-da-da-da. Because I had traveled with him, to a few towns. He let me travel with him. And, of course, I was driving his car, obviously. He was sound asleep. He broke the cardinal rule, but what was I going to say? But he said, let's stay in touch. And I said, Teddy, I don't know, how I'll ever thank you, just for the mentoring and helping me. He said, here's how you can thank me. If you ever see a guy that has the right attitude, has some ability, that you think deserves it, you help him, and we'll just pay it forward.
Man, I had to include that. I thought it was just such a cool story from Arn about you and his experience with you during like a really pivotal time in his career where he's trying to kind of build himself. Can you tell us a little bit about what you saw in a young Arn Anderson at this time?
Well, I guess the biggest thing that I saw in Arn was he, I always say this, it's hard to explain what I call the it factor. You either have it or you don't have it. And if you have that charisma, if you have that ability to engage the fans and connect with them, so to speak, it's kind of like that goes a long way. Because and here's a young guy starting out, but I could tell he's got it, and that's why I took the time to like mentor him a little bit, because I knew that to myself I said this kid's going to go a long way. He's going to be somebody in our business, And it's because he had that. I mean, like you can take a lot of, I don't know if it works like with other actors or whatever, but I've actually seen a couple of guys get in the ring, and if you were to just grade them by what they did, okay, they had an okay match. But if they don't have that spark, you can't teach it. And that's what's so hard to get guys to understand. You either have it or you don't. And it's kind of like, to me, probably, in my opinion, one of the greatest entertainers of all time, and he definitely had it, was Elvis Presley. Oh my gosh. I mean, from day one, it's kind of like back when you look at him and when he was first on stage before he got ultra famous, and and just the way he danced and the way he presented himself. I mean, you can't teach anybody that. It's like you just know. I mean, it's like I'm sure that's what Colonel Parker saw. When he saw what that kid had, he said, "I want to be your guy." And that's just it. And so Arn had it, and the other thing was he was just a good person. And again, and what he said, he came and he said he was grateful to. He said, "Thanks for helping me." And I said, "Well, you deserved it." So, and he proved it. I was right. He had it, and later he got a chance to really show it.
Man, cool to see kind of the connective tissue between the two of you, especially because, as you said, here in just a couple of years, you'll be in the WWF, and he's making his way in a huge way with the Four Horsemen and going on to have a Hall of Fame career himself. So really cool to learn that you were such a huge influence on a young Arn Anderson when he's just a year into the business.
Yeah.
So Ted, you've heard the phrase "turnabout is fair play," and after your fake broken hand a couple weeks earlier, Johnny Rich had a little surprise in store for you on the 7/14 episode. It's our next clip.
He vanished for one fall with a 10-minute time limit. In the red corner at 268 pounds from Omaha, Nebraska, Ted DiBiase. And I see that Ted DiBiase's opponent, Johnny Rich, comes to the ring with trousers on and his hand in a bandage. What is this?
I was injured in a match a little bit earlier, and I seen the doctor, and he told me that I shouldn't wrestle with it. So I'm going to have a substitute today. DiBiase, you most of all...
That's the sorriest excuse I've ever heard. There's nothing wrong with your hand. You're just afraid, Rich. You're just a coward.
I've got somebody...
Just tell these people the truth, that you're just a coward.
I got somebody that'll take care of you, DiBiase.
I don't care what you got, Rich. Just get on out of here.
You most of all...
I don't even like looking at cowards. Just get on out.
Well, Johnny Rich says that he has a substitute. Well, we're waiting on that substitute right now. I don't know if this has been approved by matchmaker Grizzly Smith or not, but we'll soon find out. Well, Johnny Rich says that he has... Here he comes. That substitute is Hacksaw Duggan.
Looks like payback time. DiBiase got away with that broken hand till Dugan broke the cast. Dugan's been wanting a showdown with DiBiase right here on TV. It looks like he and Johnny Rich have cooked up a little scheme here. And Hacksaw Duggan is really punishing him. He must be pulling DiBiase's hair right out by the roots, Boyd.
Bill, they're pulling out all stop.
DiBiase's face really met. DiBiase really getting popped now. Wow.
The fans are on their feet.
Watch out, there's Bundy forward, and Bundy's got that whole arm taped up. Bundy's got that arm, and he's clubbing Dugan. He threw Rick Ferrara right of the ring. Rick Ferrara is signifying for the disqualification, but that's not going to save Dugan, as Bundy, like he did to Dusty Rhodes, the American Dream, he's got that whole arm clubbed, and he's just clubbing him. And now DiBiase's up, and it's 2-on-1. DiBiase's holding him, and here comes Joe Stark. Joe Stark is in, but DiBiase's popping Stark, and Stark is in, and he's right back out, and they're still. Here comes Johnny Rich. Johnny Rich is clubbing away, but Bundy's 420 through. Here's Magnum. Bells ringing. There's a brawl with DiBiase, and they're still punting. The crowd is this place is in pandemonium. There comes JYD, and King Rat's trying to meet the dog, but you can't stop the dog with a machine.
Another fun clip there, Ted. Man, between you and Bundy and Rich, everybody was taped up on their hand this month. What is going on?
Oh wow, that brings back some memories, man.
You remember that?
I do now that I saw it. Yeah, wow.
Great. Jogs the memory a little bit.
Yeah.
And cool to see you and Jim. It's you guys had been in the Rat Pack with Matt Bourne here not all that long ago. And then, of course, Matt Bourne was dismissed and you wound up running off with Skandar Akbar. And, we've talked about it here before. Jim, just a fantastic performer in his own right, but not quite the ring technician that you were. Did you have to adjust your style, much like the same concept with JYD, where, hey, just put him in the center of the ring and work around him? Or how did it work with Jim?
Well, I mean, I think Jim was a little more, oh my gosh, you see what you saw there. What Jim ended up being was very good on the microphone.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh, he could really cut a promo, and when working with a guy like that, and again, this is back. I had some years on Jim. Jim had just, he hadn't been wrestling professionally that long, and so I was able to. It's kind of like when you work with somebody, it's kind of like, and I'd say it this way: when I started in Mid-South, the talent that I was exposed to, the guys that I had the opportunity to get in the ring with and have matches with, that taught me, that helped me come along. I'm just so grateful for that. And again, I look back at it and I go, wow, because Bill Watts, he brought a lot of great talent into Mid-South, and they came and they went, and I reaped the benefit and learned how to be a worker. But and so did Jim. Again, Jim great. Jim is great on the microphone, and everybody's got a different style, and he was that rough and tumble guy. It was great.
Man, cool to see it. And yeah, like Jim is, I know that a lot of folks nowadays are very focused on like, star ratings, 5-star matches, stuff like that. But really, it's, Jim was kind of the precursor to those brawling guys, kind of like a Stone Cold, where it's like he comes out and he's just beating the shit out of everybody. And that was just Jim. Yeah. And it worked.
Yeah.
And man, he got over in a big way in that territory. And then, of course, went on to have incredible success in the WWF. Also notable. Oh, go ahead.
And making a comparison to like that and Stone Cold. I mean, Steve Austin again, had charisma, could cut the best interview that you ever had, but that's what he was. He was a brawler, and it's kind of like, Steve Austin started as a heel, correct?
Yes, sir.
I mean, and here's the deal: you start as a heel, and you're that good. It's like, it's the kind of heel he was. He was what we call a tough guy heel.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're a tough guy, now I wasn't the tough guy heel. I was what we call the chicken shit heel.
Yes,
it was kind of like, I would run my mouth, but then when I got in trouble, I'm on my knees backing up going, no, 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 no. You never get tired of seeing that guy get his butt kicked.
Right.
But when you're a tough guy heel, it's only a matter of time before you're going to be at babyface, because people love tough guys. And, when he continued to be Steve Austin, the tough guy, over time, the fans will turn you, and that's what happened to him.
For sure. And look, Austin started out as more of a technician, but then he suffered that neck injury in 1997, and he had to adjust his style. And really, after 97 is when his star really started to rise, because it fit with him. He became that brawler, and it just worked, and it worked for Jim. So I don't care what kind of star rating Jim Duggan gets in his matches. The guy was fantastic.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And
So
one of my best buddies too, man.
you will not meet a nicer human being in professional
Yeah,
wrestling than
that's
Jim
right.
Duggan. Also notable at this time is that Butch Reed will defeat JYD at the Superdome for the North American title. JYD was about a year away from his jump to the WWF at this time, but do you think that Watts was kind of preemptively trying to find the guy that would fill Sylvester's shoes whenever he left the territory?
Uh, I never really thought about that. And so what was the match? JYD and Butch Reed.
It was Butch Reed who would. I know that down the road when JYD would leave, Bill Watts would kind of try to make Butch Reed his new JYD. So yeah, just seeing that Butch Reed is going over against JYD in the Superdome and winning that North American title, I was like, maybe Watts was starting to see the writing on the wall that like, hey, look, I can't keep JYD here forever. He's going to go after that big money.
Yeah, I think you're right. And again, Butch Reed, good guy, pretty good worker, but Butch Reed never had that over the top charisma,
Right.
if you know what I mean. He was a good solid hand, but that's just my opinion. He didn't have the over the top charisma like JYD. I mean, Butch Reed didn't, this is one interview JYD cut on me. He said, DiBiase, he said, you can't come like a cabbage, all head, no rear. You got to bring some to get some. I was just like, wow, where did that come from? But that was just JYD.
Man, it's like, Watts, God bless him for giving it a shot, but like trying to replace a guy like JYD, nope.
Oh, yeah, hard to replace that. Yeah.
Impossible.
But I think you're probably right.
The 721 episode, yourself and Mr. Olympia would successfully defend the tag titles against Johnny Rich and Tim Horner with the loaded boot from Olympia and the power slam from you to get the job done. And we'll wrap up July in Mid-South in memorable fashion. On the 728 episode, you team up with Bundy again. But this time you're taking on Johnny Rich and your future tag team partner, Dr. Death Steve Williams. We're going to drop in on the final moments of the match as Bundy and Dr. Death are set to square off.
Here we go. You hear the sparks flying?
You see the doc clap his hands when Bundy came in.
He loves it.
Tremendous.
Monsters here.
They measure each other. Tie up, collar and elbow. Hey, they're both pretty cautious. They're both respecting that size and strength. One thing, you can never forget that mask. Doc found out once against Mitch Shelton when he went under him at Gallagher Hall. And by gosh, if you get that... Oh! Boy, Bundy might have got a broken nose out of that one. Doc is firing away. Tag is made. DiBiase in. Doc is hammering DiBiase too. Johnny Rich is taking a piece of Bundy. Johnny Rich wanted some of that action. I don't know, Johnny. That Bundy. Oh, they doubled up on him. Oh, look at. Doc got him in sort of a stampede. Got a three. Doc got a 3 count. Dr. Death and Johnny Rich beat King Kong Bundy and Ted DiBiase. He got a 3 count. Boy, you and I heard it. Ring it. Ring it. Ring it. Hang on. Continuing on. Bundy trying to get Doc and DiBiase. Match is over. The match is over. Doc has run their heads together. He's not going to quit fighting. I think they just found somebody that just wants it a little bit more. I don't know what they're doing here. The match is over. There should be another referee down here trying to stop this thing. The match is over, and it's a victory for Bundy for Dr. Death.
Man, that was great stuff. You had to be standing on the apron when Dr. Death and Bundy squared up like, hey, all right, let's see how this goes.
Yeah, and as I watched that, there had to, I can't remember the match now. That's way too long ago, but I mean, watching it, there had to be some confusion there somewhere. I don't know if when the referee counted three that was was supposed to be the end of the match, or I don't know. It just looked like we continued. I don't know.
That's what I was going to ask you about, because you guys continued it, and there was definite confusion where it's like you guys didn't look like the match was over, and like when I saw it, I was like, was Bundy supposed to take the fall, but he put his arm up like accidentally?
I don't know. I can't remember, but I can guarantee you this: we heard about it. We heard about it back in the dressing room for Bill. I can guarantee you. There was a chewing out for somebody.
You could hear that Bill was like a little bit flabbergasted, and he kind of keeps reiterating like, okay, the match is over. That's it. He pinned him. That's it. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what the circumstances were, but Bundy's shoulders definitely were not down. So I wonder if he's the one who got the heat from Bill when you guys did get backstage.
Yeah. Or if his shoulder wasn't down, maybe the referee got the heat.
Somebody needed to, because man, that was a problem. So Doc was considered one of the toughest men in wrestling history, and he actually started at the exact same time as Arn Anderson. Did you see that main event potential in him, like Jim Ross and Bill Watts were so confident?
When I met Doc, I mean, oh my gosh, number one, a lot of personality, and right off the get-go, I didn't. I mean, it was kind of like, but tough, and just, I mean, Steve Williams didn't realize how. I mean, he's probably one of the strongest guys that I've ever met, and a real good guy. And I believe that the reason that Bill eventually put him with me was to help him come along. And he definitely came along.
Man, irreplaceable look. Just this big. I mean, you saw him there. He picked up Bundy and slammed him, which is remarkable.
I mean, I would imagine Bundy was surprised too. I don't think anybody else has ever picked Bundy up and slammed him.
I don't think Bundy was ready for it, because he kind of like dead weighted him, but he got him up anyways. But man, it was wild. And let me tell you, our first look back here at Mid-South was an absolute blast today. That wraps up the month of July. We'll keep dropping in like this here and there on Mid-South, so that we can kind of squeeze every ounce of the story of Mid-South out of it. Before we go, I do want to remind you all that if you'd like to get this podcast on video with no commercials, the only place to do it is at premierstreamingnetwork.com. They've got a ton of sports, entertainment, other shows. We're talking about RVD has a podcast, Sabu. My friend Efren does the Game Event Game Show over there. There's just so much incredible content over there, whether you're a wrestling fan, sports fan, just a fan of entertainment. You've got to sign up for Premier Plus at premierstreamingnetwork.com. Also, if you're enjoying our show and you're listening on your podcast app, do us a favor. Just take a minute. Give us a like, subscribe, leave us a 5-star review. That kind of stuff helps us out a ton. And we are going to be back next week, but in the meantime, we'd love to interact with you guys on social media at Ted DiBiase Pod on all social media platforms. You can also follow Ted at MDMT Ted DiBiase on his social media. Follow me at Marcus P. D'Angelo on Twitter, and follow Premier Streaming Network at Watch on Premier on Twitter and at Premier Streaming Network on Instagram and Facebook. Dad, that's going to wrap us up for this week. A fun look back here, 40 years.
Wow. Yeah, man. That's like, it's really cool. I mean, it's kind of like, I'm watching this, and I'm looking at me, and my body, and my, like going, what the heck happened?
Ted, when do you think was the last time you saw some of this footage? Have you ever?
Gosh, it's been a long time. It has been a long time. So,
man, I'm fortunate to be able to witness this stuff with you, maybe for the first time ever since it happened.
Yeah.
I'm glad that we're doing it, and I know that we've certainly got a lot more in store for our listeners, right?
That's awesome. So, as I go, number one, Marcus, thank you. And everybody else, just remember, everybody's got a price for the $1 Million Man.
We will catch you guys next week right here on Everybody's Got a Pod.